ask you to join me in prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable unto you, our rock and our redeemer. May we hear your word. May we be transformed by your word. May we share the gifts that you have given us and make this world a better place. In Christ's name we all pray. Amen. For the past 2 weeks, we've been having this conversation about how, as we're beginning a new year, how can we together discern God's will? And it's always a good time when you begin a new year, at least to be in this pondering, time and just discerning time to hopefully make 2019 a better year. And so we started 2 weeks ago by asking a simple question. What are the things that you are curious about? What are the things that keep tugging you? And what are those things that just call your name? And because sometimes when we want to discern what we need to do, maybe we begin by what we are interested in and curious about. And by following that path, we might discover something that we didn't know we needed to do. And so curiosity is an important part of that journey. And then last week, although we didn't get together, Chelsea prepared this beautiful sermon that shared with all of you about our giftedness and how, we are all gifted. From the beginning, God said we are all beloved. And in that belovedness, we have been gifted God's love and grace. And we are special and we have something to contribute. It's not a competition about who has more gifts than the other. It's really a competition it's not even a competition, sorry. It's how can you be yourself with the giftedness that God has given you? So go and claim that gift that you are in this world. And now this week I have a different question. Now that you know that it is okay to pursue curiosity, that is important for you to know that you're gifted. This week, the question is, how can my giftedness meet a significant need in the world? How is it that I fit into this big puzzle of life with what I have to make this world a better place and really bless other people and do something that is larger than myself? As I was working this week on this sermon, particularly looking at the Exodus passage and particularly looking at the lives of these two midwives, I couldn't help but to be very thankful for all the people that in one way or another love, care, and are in the business of, raising children. So this morning, I'm so thankful for all the teachers and principals and nurses and doctors and childcare providers and all the people that have the beautiful task of raising and protecting and caring for our children. That task that at times is not recognized, but as we see this morning in this passage is so important, critical for all of us. I just been pondering the fact that life is already a miracle, the fact that we are here in this world as that biological miracle of life, that we are here. But then I ponder, and think about, someone had to raise us. And as much as we may have to go to therapy to talk about our parents, they care for us. They clean our diapers. They make sure that we had food. They make sure that, we were protected and it wasn't perfect, but it is an amazing miracle that all of us are here alive. And so all the people that care for children are so important, so critical for all of us, not just to be here, but to hopefully make people better and with purpose and people who have a desire to change the world. So I'm so thankful for all the people. We have an early education center here at our church, and that's such a critical mission of St. Matthew's that we need to be thankful and pray for and support because of the work that they do in this community. The midwives of this story are such an important part, not just of today's sermon, but of the larger story of the people of Israel. These two Hebrew women who, with their gift of loving children and life, became so critical. I don't need to tell you already that the role of a midwife back in this time was very important. And even though you may have been a rich and powerful person, which were very few of them, and you had access to medical care and the best doctors or whatever was available to you, the role of the midwife was very important to keep the mom and the baby alive. Their wisdom, their understanding of the female body and what was needed was so important for everybody. So in many ways, the midwives, they're important because they were part of this cycle of life and death. And I don't know, what was the death rate of babies or any of those things, but I can tell you that they played a significant role. So these two midwives were already important. But then in the midst of their gift of helping women to give birth, their role became even more important as the Pharaoh escalated things for the people of Israel. We already see that the Pharaoh was, and the people, maybe his economic advisors and the people surrounding him, were beginning to feel very threatened by the Hebrew people. They were beginning to feel that they were growing, that they were multiplying, and at some point, because they were abusing them so much, if they kept growing, they were going to come a time when they would really want to fight them. And so they're looking at this group of people who were already enslaved and abused and saying, what can we do to control these people? Well, let's give it more work. Maybe that would do it. Let's getting more tired. Let's give them more hours of work. Let's just, run them, let's just abuse them more, and maybe that will be enough. And yet, as they kept doing that, the story tells us that they kept growing and multiplying and getting stronger. So as the next policy for the government of Egypt was beginning to be developed, they came with an awful idea. Let's then now, because we're not able to control them, let's kill the baby boys. And again, this is part of this systematic abuse by the Egyptians against the people of Israel, a systematic abuse that started, it actually is really sad to see their story, because as we heard this morning, the relationship between the Hebrew people and the Egyptians didn't start this way. It actually started as a partnership when Joseph became a governor for Egypt, and because he was so smart at a time of famine, he was able to help the Egyptians to save food. And as they save food, not only have food for themselves, but also to sell food to others. And in that process, they became a powerful nation. And so for some time, the Hebrew people were respected and invited, and they wanted them to be part of their nation. But then things changed. Things changed, and for this Pharaoh, those days were forgotten. What really mattered today was, how can I keep control of the economic, development that we have, and how can we keep growing our commitments, our hospitality, our care for humanity? It doesn't matter. What matters is to keep getting stronger. And so in that process, this Pharaoh decided that what mattered was just the means, the end justified the means. And if we have to sacrifice these people in order to be protected, if it means a combination of ethnic cleansing with population control, where we're going to kill babies, it doesn't really matter, because it's all about keeping the control. And this should be for us a cautionary tale of how, when we begin to give in the fear of others, when we begin to be given to the fear of people threatening our stability or our national interest, how we can begin to scapegoating, that eventually, if we don't stop, it can lead to, again, population control and abuse. So this is where we find ourselves in this story, where, if you think about it, it's a very sad and depressing story, where you begin to wonder, where is God in all of this? Where is God in this time of great crisis for the people of God? We don't even hear about God until verse 17 in this story, and we read through verse 22. Where is God in all of this? And the way God comes into the picture, it's in a very unorthodox way. God is first mentioned when we get introduced to those two midwives. We hear that these women fear God. And that doesn't mean that they were afraid of God. That means that they respected and were obedient to God. And so these two women, in their task as midwives, in their gift of caring for life, introduce God into this story, this horrible story. And with their actions, they actually began to turn around things. They became a model and a blueprint for all of us to begin to realize that, when you go to work, you don't know what's going to happen. You just go to work, right? It's just the same every day. You just go to work and show up. But you don't know what's going to happen when you show up, except that you're going to bring your gifts. And so as these two women bring their gifts, they find themselves at the center of a crisis. And as they find themselves at the center of a crisis, they continue to offer their gifts, and they begin to, their giftedness brings and fulfills a great need in the world. You see, these two unknown midwives, powerless, non-important, people who, again, didn't really have, a special name or a special family, I guess. These women who were already burdened by the work that they had to do. Remember, the Hebrew people, they were slaves. So their task was so critical for the people of Israel because they were, they didn't have all the help that the Egyptians may have had. These women who again showed up to work on this day, they offer life to the people of Israel. And with their small action of disobeying, the Pharaoh, but most importantly, with their action of offering their gifts, they save lives. And not only they save lives immediately, but eventually, because of what they do, not knowing what the result of their actions was going to be in the future, they became an instrument and they inserted themselves in the life and story of Moses, who was going to come later to be the one who was going to come and rescue the people of Israel. Without them knowing that their actions were going to inspire other people to disobey, the Pharaoh, they inserted themselves in the middle of this amazing change because they came and offered their gifts and truly transformed the world. What if I told you today that maybe today or this week you're going to change the world? What would you say about that? You will say, you're crazy. I'm retired. You're crazy. I just work. I'm not even working right now with the shutdown. What do you I'm not going to change the world. I don't have any power. I can't do anything about it. But what if I told you that just like these two midwives, we have been called to share our gifts, regardless of the circumstances, and in the sharing of our giftedness, fulfill an amazing need in this world? What if I told you that the midwives never thought about changing the world, but just showing up to work? And today we find ourselves in a similar place, where as we're wrestling with discerning what is the right thing for us to do, how can we change this country? How can we make the church better? How can we bring goodness into the world? The answer might be not in the overwhelming great question of how to change the world, but maybe what if the answer comes in you sharing what you have? What if today we can actually be part of that change? You probably have heard of this theory of the butterfly effect. Maybe at some point there was a movie, and this was a theory created by an MIT professor that basically what he's proposing is that there are some actions that we do in the world that we think are not important, but that as we show up and bring our presence and we make decisions, and as we are part of this world, just because of our presence, the world begins to change. And when you have a lot of people, coming along your side, there's this butterfly effect that begins to make a chain reaction that can bring huge changes in the world, in society, in medicine, in the economy. We never think of ourselves as the people who are going to change our economic patterns. But it is true that as we bring who we are, there is this change that begins to take place. And so what if we take this butterfly effect and we make it a good butterfly effect, where we sow goodness, where we plant goodness so that others can sow that goodness and see the fruits of our labor becoming and making a better world. I'm sure that you don't see yourselves, that your actions can truly change the world, but today, if we're paying attention to the amazing story of the Hebrew people, I hope that you see yourself reflected in these two midwives who truly changed the world for all of us. This week, I don't know how many of you know Mary Oliver, who was a wonderful poet. She passed away this week. And I always liked her. Michelle, my wife, really likes her. And she was telling me this week that she actually got to hear her speak. And she actually has a signed book from her. So, but there is this beautiful poem that she wrote from the many. And you know, one of the things about Mary Oliver, if you read some of her poems, you will see that there's almost like this agenda that she's trying to teach us. And that is that we pay attention to the little things in the world, and you keep doing what you think is little in the world, and eventually can become something amazing. And that's really what her life was. Someone who paid attention, who prayed, who stopped, and in that process, she became a gift to all of us, a big gift. So I want to share with you this poem that I think, as I read it, and as I read it, it seems to be that it comes to reflect the lives of these two women. And hopefully it can come to reflect our lives as we begin a new year. And as we really come to this world to offer our giftedness so that it might be able to meet a significant need in the world. This poem is called Wild Geese. The midwives, Sifra and Pua, taught us that our giftedness does meet a significant need in the world. Now let's go and do that. Amen.